Ayo guys, this is Joe Mas, JLP Music. We just have to listen to what this sounds like. Here with me is a beat breakdown on how I make 80s disco vibe type of beats. Throughout my journey in making these type of beats, I've been inspired by the likes of Donna Summer, Brenda Fassie, Yvonne Chaka, the Point Sisters, Steve Nicks, and not forgetting Whitney, just to mention a few of course. So without further ado, let's jump right in it and get to explore on how I came about this beat. Now, this beat falls under the BPM of 113 with an E major scale. I firstly started with a snare. This is what it sounds like. I then introduced a second snare that gave a deep feel, It gave a deep feel more like a stadium snare. With the same arrangement as the first one, I just reduced the velocity in the notes. Now these two snares combined, they sounded like this. I then introduced a hi-hat with this arrangement, simple arrangement. I then introduced a second one. A third hi-hat was introduced, but then I rendered this one. I rendered it. Now these three hi-hats combined, they came up to this. Combined with the snare. So that's how I came about the percussions. Combined with the kick. Simple kick arrangement. Now, just one more tip that I used on the snare, as you can hear on the reverb. I created a reverb send that was sent all the way to 0 dB. But then on the reverb send, I had to sidechain it back into the snare so that every time the snare hits, the reverb ducks. I had to create more like a caving sidechain whereby I create space for the snare to hit and the reverb reduces in terms of its amount. So this is what I did on the reverb send. I lastly introduced a compressor in the chain, then sidechained it back into the snare. So this is what it sounds like without. It sounds dry. Then with the reverb, as you can hear, we get the reverb impact, but then we also get the snare impact. It's not drowned in the reverb. So the percussions came down to this. And now to the chords. I introduced a Lizard Lounge. It's an electric piano with these chords. Let's go through them solo. So this is a C sharp minor, repeats, and then a G sharp minor, repeats, then an A, G sharp minor, back to C sharp minor, repeating. So those were the chords that I felt were perfect fit for this type of beat that I was making. Then from these chords, I had to create more of a strumming feel with a piano. So I came about this piano vibe kind of feel. So this is what I did. This is what I came up with. From the very same chords, you know. So that with that type of vibe, that type of strumming in relation to the percussions, this is what it sounds like. All right, so moving on, I introduced the bass because I wanted that funky vibe to come through. You know, the bass drives these kind of beats. You know, it gives that vibe, that funkiness. So this is the bass arrangement, the bass solo. So that's the bass. Now the bass in relation to the percussions. Then in relation to the electric piano and the strumming piano. I have noticed that the piano seems to be dragging in some places. I don't know why. I think maybe the latency of the audio interface that I'm using. Then it was some string time. I usually do render my MIDI files, my MIDI sounds into an audio file every time I create a sound that I like. If I feel that this is the sound that I like, I bounce it, I render it into an audio file. So from this string instrument, I rendered it. I rendered the audio. I rendered it into audio. This is what I came up with. Of course, towards the last part, I introduced a unique feel. Which just appears only there. Then I wanted to create some bell instruments, you know, some bell sounds. I firstly had to introduce the marimba. I created a marimba sound from the very same copied MIDI arrangement from the strumming piano. They were just copied, you know. That was the first sound. Then I loaded Heat Up. I used the preset from bell to create another bell sound. Those two incorporated. plus the strings. And the bass. So I would say those were the main driving instruments towards this beat, because actually they gave it that vibe, that 80s vibe. And the relation with the drum percussion, it just spiced it all up. I then created a muted guitar effect. I created this first one, which I rendered with lots of effects, by the way. Then I wanted a second muted guitar to support the first one. Simple chords. You know? Then there was a third guitar that was just copied from the very same chords that we had from the electric piano. That sounded like this. That bouncy feel. I just wanted that bouncy vibe. With the bass and the percussions. Plus the strings. And then on the very same note of me working on MIDI and rendering, I did come up with this sound in Arcade. I just wanted it to complement in some parts of the beat. This is what it sounds like. You know? With a huge feedback. A huge feedback in delay. That's what I wanted. That's what I was going for. So that incorporated with the bass. You know, I wanted it just to come on those parts. So with the drum percussion and that simple instrument. With the strings. Now the strumming piano and the bells. So in true sense, not every instrument would play on the same space. I would have to remove some instruments from this part, you know. Some instrument have to produce a sound somewhere and not somewhere, you know, some places. so that I create space in terms of the vocals that will be used in this beat. So yeah, guys, that's mostly what I do whenever I'm making these kind of beats. I know it's not yet finalized. I would have to make some changes, maybe add in some instruments, maybe add in some ideas. But overall, this is just a sketch of how I come up there with the 80s type of beats. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you for staying tuned. Thank you for paying attention to my channel and helping it grow at a steady pace. Thank you. Until the next one, see you.